Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at the Oculus Quest 2 VR headset. And when people ask me about virtual reality and what headset they should get, more often than not, I am recommending this one because it is probably the most consumer-friendly VR headset on the market. It is the easiest to get up and running. It's very comfortable to use. It works as a standalone device with no computer required, but it also works with a computer if you want to use it as a PC headset. And as a result, this is something that, again, I think is really well suited for consumers that are just interested in VR and want to dip their toes into the virtual waters, if you will. And we're going to take a look at this headset today and all the things that I like about it in just a second. But I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that I paid for this with my own funds. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. No one is paying for this review, nor has anyone reviewed or approved what you're about to see before it was uploaded. So let's get into it now and see what I like about the Oculus Quest 2. Now, the price point on this is $299 for the 64GB version and about $100 more for the 256GB version. Beyond the storage capacity, there is no difference between the 64 or the 256. And I would say if you plan to use this only as a standalone headset, you might want to look at the 256, especially if you plan to download a lot of different games and want them on it all the time. The games tend to be about 3 to 5 gigabytes in size, although some are trending a bit larger now that there's a little more hardware capacity on the Quest 2 platform. So you'll either have a limited number of games that you'll be able to store on it and then have to offload and reload stuff, or you can just buy the larger one and not have to futz around with that all that much. What I've found with VR so far at its stage of development is that a lot of the experiences are short-lived. So the games are rather large, but you're not going to play them for all that long. You'll probably jump from one experience to the other over the course of an hour or so. So again, having a little extra storage space for the standalone experience might work out. I bought the 64GB version because most of my games are on the PC, and that's of course stored on the computer, and I just use the headset as a headset most of the time. Now, included in the box is of course the headset, but also these two VR controllers, and they are molded for your left and right hands. They have a control stick on them along with some buttons here. There's a trigger here in the front, and then a little shoulder trigger here. And there's also a capacitive sensor on here as well. And this kind of replicates hand movement in the games that you're playing. And it's amazing how quickly you adapt to these controllers when you're in the VR environment. But one of the neat things about the Oculus Quest platform is that it can also now recognize your hands. And all you have to do is hold your hands up in front of it, and it will detect not only your hand, but the movement of each individual finger. And it's pretty remarkable given that it really is just powered by a mobile processor. And you'll see an example of a game in a few minutes that actually uses your hands versus the controllers. And I suspect we'll see more and more games go with the hand movement because it is a lot more natural. Now, the hardware overall feels very mature and refined, and I found it to be much more comfortable than the original Oculus Quest that I looked at about a year and a half ago. The weight on this one is 503 grams or 1.1 pounds, and the old one was 571 grams or 1¼ pounds. And that doesn't sound like a lot when you look at it on paper, but when you're wearing it for an hour, it is a difference that you'll notice and feel, especially if you tried out the other one. It's pretty comfortable over an extended period of time. The padding here is really good, and overall it wasn't putting a lot of pressure on my face like I felt on the other one, so I was very pleased with the comfort there. The strap that I have on mine is the default strap that you get on the lowest priced option. They do have a premium strap that might be easier to adjust, especially if you're sharing this with other people. So this one has a Velcro strap here at the top to kind of tighten things up around your head, and then you can also tighten up the sides here with this other strap. But the other more premium strap option I think might be a little bit easier to get people in and out of because it just has a little twisty thing in the back to get you going. They integrated speakers into the strap like they did on the prior edition. The speakers sound very nice, and you get a really good amount of spatiality and stereo separation, obviously, because they're basically shooting into each ear individually. But there's also a headphone jack here, and I've got a pair of really nice Sennheisers that I wear with this that really get you into the zone there because it will filter out all the other noise in the room. But the built-in speakers here are actually very, very good for being the default that comes on the strap. The eyepieces here have a limited IPD adjustment versus the prior edition, so there's only 3 stops here on this as you're moving things around. I did hear from some folks who said that you can kind of force it into the middle of a position if you want, but they sometimes slip out of that. They basically click into place. Now the IPD settings are 58 millimeters, 63 millimeters, or 68 millimeters. And if things are not looking that good or they're a little blurry, you can adjust it and find the setting that works best for you. But there's only 3 settings, whereas the other one you could more finely tune. So that's one difference to the negative that I found, especially if you have eyes that fall outside the normal range for IPD distance. Now, if you wear glasses, they do include a spacer in the box to give you a little bit more distance between your glasses and the lenses of the headset, and that you can just insert in between the padding here and the headset itself. One thing I really like about the headset is that it's very easy to pull the padding off to clean it, and you could buy a couple of these padding inserts and just swap them out if you've got kids that are sharing the headset or something, so that can be pretty useful there. The battery life on this, of course, is not great. You're looking at about 2 hours or so, depending on the experiences that you're running. Some of the more demanding experiences will run closer to the 2-hour mark, and others will give you a little bit more battery life if they're not working the processor too hard. You charge it through its USB Type-C port right here. This will fast charge with the USB-C power delivery, so it won't take all that long to charge it. And again, you'll get about 2 hours of playable time out of one of those charges. But to be honest, by the time you get to 2 hours, your eyes are ready for a rest anyhow, and I've never run the battery down on this thing before my eyes gave out on it. Now, the resolution of the new headset has been improved over the prior edition. It's running now at 1832 by 1920 pixels per eye. That compares to 1440 by 1600 on the old one. That reduces something called the screen door effect, where you see the borders of the pixels when you put the headset on. The lenses tend to magnify the image, and on a lower resolution screen, it also magnifies the borders of the pixels. So when you can kind of cram more pixels into a space, you'll see less of that when you put the headset on, and that is definitely noticeable here. Now, not all the games for this will support that higher resolution, but every game benefits because they'll upscale to the native resolution, and again, there's less of a screen door effect. The field of view on this is 90 degrees, and that means you're not going to see things in your peripheral vision like you will in real life. I found that the space games and other games where there's a darker environment tend to be more immersive as a result. So if you're in an area with a big outdoor scene, which is very brightly lit, you'll definitely feel more constrained perhaps than you would, again, in a game with a darker background. But by and large, the developers of these VR titles are very good at focusing your attention, and you very quickly kind of forget about the fact that your peripheral vision isn't getting as much. Another big improvement on this one is that it runs at a higher frame rate. This runs at 90 hertz or 90 frames per second, and that compares to 72 on the old one. You can achieve those frame rates both in the native Oculus Quest 2 software and on the PC side. And you definitely want to use that whenever possible. It just makes the VR experience better, and it reduces motion sickness because it also reduces latency. And anytime you can reduce the latency, the more comfortable it's going to feel. Now, a lot of the Oculus Quest 2 games require that you enable 90 hertz in the options for that game. And the reason is that you'll see a slight graphical reduction to hit that frame rate. And that is always the trade-off. It's graphical fidelity versus frame rate. That's the case on the PC. It's going to be the case here on the headset. But the good news is that the resolution and frame rate is supported both for the native titles and for PC titles that you might load up with it. This has a Snapdragon XR2 processor. That's an improvement over the 835 in the old one. This has 6 gigs of RAM versus 4 gigs on the old one as well. So across the board, a nice improvement, and you'll see that if you've ever used the Oculus Quest 1 in a lot of the native titles. They feel more responsive, the menus kind of navigate quicker. Now, just like the prior edition Quest, this has 4 cameras on it to track its position in space. It also uses these cameras to track the position of the controllers or your hands. And I do suggest giving yourself some room to play in, because a lot of the VR titles assume that you can move around, and what you do is create what's called a Guardian. Now, this is a shot from the old version of the Quest, but it's exactly the same here on the new one. And what you do is you define the floor, you pick up the controllers, and then you draw out your space that you have to play with here. You can see me doing that here. And then it will kind of create a virtual room in which you'll be playing. And once you get too close to the end of the barrier, it will project up that virtual fencing there to let you know that you've gone too far. And if you go beyond it, it'll actually fade the VR image out and give you the image of your room so you know not to walk into something. So I would definitely clear out a good area, make sure you're not near stairs or something where you could hurt yourself, because it's very easy to kind of get lost in these games and do something that might result in personal injury. You can actually set a pretty big area with this. But it doesn't like to work outside. The cameras are pretty sensitive, so if you get into an area that's too bright, you're going to have some tracking issues. Likewise, if it's too dark, you're also going to have some tracking issues. So a decently lit room is important, and again, it's not going to work very well outside. Some folks have gone to gymnasiums and other places and have had very large Guardian areas set up, and there's some really cool stuff you can do with this headset, and developers have been working on different types of games to take advantage of larger play spaces. So let's take a look at some games running on the Quest, and these are all native games that run on the headset without a PC. You're able to stream the output of the headset to a Chromecast or an Android TV. You can also stream the output to a phone or tablet, and that's how we're capturing this footage. Now, this game is called Space Pirate Trainer. It runs at the native 90 hertz of the new Quest 2, and it's just a lot of fun. It's a really neat introduction to room scale VR because you have to make use of both of your hands. You have the choice between two weapons or one weapon and a shield, as you can see, and you have to move around the space to avoid getting hit. It is so simple to pick up and play. I found people really can get this game real quick, and it's just a fun way to get a feel for how modern VR works. This is also available on the PC. It plays the same on the PC, but the graphical fidelity is a little bit better on the computer. But this is a very good version of it and a real showpiece for the whole modern VR experience. Here's another one called Vacation Simulator, and this one allows you to use your hands versus the controllers. And it's kind of fun. As you can see, I'm playing around with some of the objects in the space. And what's funny is just how quickly you adapt to using your hands versus the controllers here. Everything just feels natural. The hand controls are still a little bit glitchy. It's early days for this feature, but it's definitely something that I think is getting there, and this game executes it pretty well. It's a real fun game. It's a sequel to another one that I like quite a bit called Job Simulator. So definitely check that one out. I'll fast forward here a little bit so you can see a little bit more of the gameplay. This, I think, supports the higher resolution and the 90 hertz as well. The graphics here are pretty simple. They're kind of flat shaded, so it's a little bit more compatible with the hardware. And one thing that you don't get in watching these 2D images from the headset is the level of immersion. All of this is 3D, and you really feel like you're in these environments. It's just a ton of fun. And I'm really impressed with just what you can do with the standalone titles. Here's another one called Vader Immortal. Now, this one came out on the original Quest, but runs great on the new one. This is an example of a game that I don't think is, at least at the time I was recording this, was optimized for the Quest 2. They might have up-res the graphics since, but it just kind of immerses you into this awesome Star Wars story. There's lightsabers. You have an encounter with Darth Vader. There's 3 episodes to it. I've only done the first episode, and I have to get to the other ones. And this is a cross-buy title, so if you buy it for the Quest, you get the PC version as well if you really want to go for the higher graphical fidelity. But it plays great on this Quest and the old one, and it just is such a fun, immersive experience. Really, really good stuff. They have a new Star Wars title, though, called Tales from Galaxy's Edge, and I think this kind of ties in with the new Disney World ride here. And here's an example. If you have a very big space, you could totally walk around in this ship if you had enough room. They do provide a mechanism where you can kind of warp yourself to different parts of the scene. But again, if you had that space, you could just walk around freely in these Star Wars environments. This is kind of similar to Vader Immortal, similar gameplay, but a very different story. and it just gives you, again, just that immersion into the Star Wars world. Now, given the Quest has been around now for about 2 years, there's a lot of titles to choose from, and you can browse through their store to see what's available. If you dig around, you'll find a lot of free experiences too. They don't tend to bring the free stuff up front and center, as they really want you to spend some money with them. But there's a lot of game demos available, so if you wanted to try out a game, there's a good chance you'll have a demo that you can get first. There's a lot of free video streaming applications available, so I think you could spend some time without spending a dime just to get a feel for the platform by downloading demos and some of the free experiences. Now, we do have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is that Oculus is owned by Facebook, and for a long time, your Oculus account was separate from Facebook, but now Facebook requires you to have a Facebook account to use an Oculus headset, and if you misbehave on Facebook and they lock your account, you're also locked out of your Oculus account. I don't like it, but that's how it works. And there are choices out there for other VR platforms that don't require you to register with Facebook. But if you don't like Facebook, that will be an impediment to enjoying this product. And there's really no way around that because the Facebook account is a requirement. There is an independent app store for the Quest called SideQuest, and you can install that. There's instructions on their site to do that. But again, the official support is Facebook only, and you must have a Facebook account. Now, as I mentioned, the Quest 2 can also work as a PC headset utilizing the Oculus Link feature. That requires that you connect the headset to your computer with a supported USB cable. Now, there's another option that some folks have been using called Virtual Desktop that allows you to stream the VR title from your PC to the Quest over Wi-Fi. I've played around with it a little bit. It's pretty cool, but for me, the latency was just a little bit too much. But a lot of folks do that and have a very good experience without being tethered to their computer. But if you make use of the official link feature, you do need to connect the cable to your computer and leave it connected at all times. Now, Oculus sells a nice long USB-C cable for that purpose. It's expensive because it's a fiber optic cable, but regular USB cables can work as well. Now, I recommend getting a USB 3 supported cable. The one I have here is from Anker, who makes some really good cables. One end here is USB-C for my headset, and then I plug it into one of my USB 3 USB-A ports on my laptop here, and this cable has been working fine for me. You definitely want at least 10 feet of cable to get yourself out from the computer a bit, because again, you will be tethered, unlike the native operation of the headset. And there are some requirements on the PC side. Now, these change quite a bit, so you'll want to check the Oculus support pages to see what is the minimum. Right now, it looks like the minimum is a GTX 970, and then you can go up from there. The 2000 series GPUs, I have a 2080 Ti on my computer upstairs, and this one is running with a 2080 Max-Q. Those work great, and I'm able to get a pretty similar experience here on this headset as I do on my HTC Vive Pro. Now, what happens is that the GPU in your computer will take the image that it generates, compress it, and push it out over the cable. So this is not like DisplayPort where you're getting a direct display input to the headset. So there's a little bit of artifacting that you might see from that compression process because it is basically streaming the game over the USB cable. But you can, if you go into a diagnostics tool, bump up that bit rate a bit to improve the image quality. I found it to be very close to what I experience on my Vive Pro. And I'm not a real VR power user here, so I think for most folks, the default with the cable when you plug it in is going to be just fine, but you can tweak it a bit. But it won't be as pure as a VR headset that makes use of a direct DisplayPort or HDMI connection. Now, when you attach the cable to the headset, you'll be prompted to enable link mode. That will begin the communication with the computer, and you'll soon be brought into the Oculus PC store. And you will need to use the controllers because at the moment, the PC side of things doesn't support the hand movements. And one thing I suggest you do for the best results is to go into the Oculus app on your PC when the headset is connected and go over to the settings here so that you can get the graphics dialed up, because by default, it's going to go for the lower frame rate, the 72 hertz. You're going to want to bump that to 90, and then you can also tweak the resolution. I've left mine at the default setting here, but you can tweak some of the graphical settings to improve things or reduce quality as you see fit. This also works just fine with the Steam VR platform. So if you have games on Steam like I do, you can just load them up and Steam recognizes this as a regular Oculus headset. Sometimes it's a little weird to have to load up Steam from the Oculus interface, but it works and I haven't had any problems with compatibility, and it's good to see now that both the higher resolution graphics and the 90 Hertz here is supported in link mode. Now, a little bit earlier during a live stream, we booted up Star Wars Squadrons on my gaming PC, and we hooked up the headset via the link cable. I was using my HOTAS setup, which is a joystick and throttle combo, to get the best experience here, and it works great. In fact, I haven't found a PC title that doesn't run great on the Quest 2 in link mode. That includes the Oculus titles, that includes Steam VR titles, even some of the indie stuff that just runs directly boots up just fine because it's a fully compatible Oculus headset to whatever software you might run. So I found it to be a great experience. You get a lot more graphical fidelity and detail out of the PC side of things. Now, I am definitely seeing some battery drain on my headset in link mode, both on this laptop and my PC upstairs with the official link cable. I have a feeling that my motherboard is not providing enough amperage over the USB port to power the headset and charge it, and I'm getting a little bit of drain on top of that, although it doesn't drain as fast when plugged in as it does when it's working standalone. And I found that I can jump into a PC VR session on my Quest 2 a lot faster than my Vive Pro. The Vive Pro requires me to boot up separate sensors. Sometimes I got to redraw the room and everything. This is a lot quicker. I just plug it in, and within a minute or two, I am in the VR environment. And with limited time, I'm often grabbing this a lot more than I am my Vive Pro, just for the convenience factor alone. And overall, I think this is a great entry point into VR. I have a feeling that Facebook is selling a lot of these, especially because there was inventory of these around the holiday season and there wasn't inventory of PlayStations and Xboxes. So I think a lot of folks picked these up as an alternative gift for the holidays. And I think people that are getting into VR for the first time are really going to enjoy the experience. The titles that I'm seeing running natively on this headset are very close to where some of the early PC titles were about 4 years ago, and those were enough to get me hooked on this whole VR thing. And it's been fun to hear from people who bought one of these things and are totally into VR now, because I have been a big fan of VR for the last couple of years, and it's been bumming me out that there hasn't been more interest in it through some of the viewers that watch my videos. And it's fun now to see people beginning to explore and discover it through the Quest platform. And the best part about this is that if you do have a PC that's capable, you can plug it in and start experiencing some of the PC titles too. All good stuff. The only downside, of course, is that Facebook connection, and if that's a problem, again, there are alternatives out there on the PC side. But beyond that, if you're looking to dip your toes into those VR waters, this is definitely something worth taking a look at. That's going to do it for now. Until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold level supporters Brian Parker, Jim Peter, Tom Albrecht, Frank Lewandowski, Mark Bollinger, and Chris Allegretta. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to lon.tv/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit lon.tv/s.